Sometimes drive-by history can be pretty significant. And that's where we're at today, a very significant site. Now, it's a national park stop, and it's called the Jackson Shrine, but hardly anybody ever comes out here. It's tucked away in the middle of nowhere, and it's not really a part of the Chancellorsville battlefield. It's not really a part of anything significant other than the fact that one man died here inside the building behind me. General Stonewall Jackson. He perished here of pneumonia May 10th of 1863. May 10th, 1863, Jackson dies right here at the location that I'm at this site, which is called the Jackson Shrine. And he was being treated in the house right there behind me. It is not May by any stretch of the imagination. It is extremely cold out here right now, and there's snow on the ground. But we're going to go check it out, take a look at what's inside this building here, and talk a little bit about the history at the Jackson Shrine here in Virginia. It's May 1863, and General Joseph Hooker has his men sitting in a similar position that it was at the time of the Battle of Fredericksburg. And he openly states that he's going to whip Bobby Lee. But what he doesn't expect is that General Jackson is going to devise a plan to take a portion of the Confederate Army, a large portion at that, and maneuver it around to the flank and fight from the flank. And he catches Joe Hooker off guard. It turns out to be a massive victory for Robert E. Lee and the Confederate Army of Northern Virginia. But it leads us here to this house. General Jackson dies May 10th, 1863, inside this house, which really was a small building outside of the major house itself. The big house would have been off in the distance over here, and there are markers to indicate where that house would have been. Jackson and his medical staff was right here inside this house. And there's a bed in there and just a few chairs. And for such a big name of this war, he died in such a small house and in such a way that it would go down as a legend. And that legendary tale would be told for years and years to come, right here in Virginia. Directly out there in front of me is a marker for Lee and Jackson's bivouac. Now, on May 2nd, about 7 a.m., it was about that time before his troops started to pass this part of the journey, and Jackson rode at the head of the column, and his face was flush as he was going down the Orange Plank Road, and he passed this point here. He rode past and he met with Lee and A.P. Hill and Jeb Stuart. And the informal council lasted but just a few minutes, and then Jackson pointed toward the head of his moving column and galloped off. Consequently, it would be the last time that Lee and Jackson would ever meet and ever speak together, before he had to have his arm amputated and then die suddenly of pneumonia just a few days later. In 1828, John Thornton had bought this outbuilding that was here near Fairfield Plantation to be an office for the plantation. The main house itself sits off in the distance right behind me, just over my shoulder. You can see markers for where the structure for the main house would have been. And May 4th of 1863, this place became a very, very busy place real quick. Jackson had just been wounded, and he was brought here to this house. 6 days later, this office would become the place where he would die. Now, in 1862, Jackson and his men had actually camped out here and in and around the woods near Fairfield Plantation. Guinea Station's not too far from here. Guinea Station was a big supply base for the operations that were happening for the Confederate Army at that time during the American Civil War between 1862 and 1864 for the campaigns up here in the northern portion of Virginia. So headed down the direction I'm headed right now, General Jackson was headed towards the Union soldiers, and he could hear the pickaxes from their lines. One of his own staff officers was telling him, "General, it's dangerous. We need to head back." And Jackson yells at him, "The danger's over. They're on the run. Go tell A.P. Hill to press on the right." Eventually, sometime around 9 p.m. that night, Jackson does make his way back. And as he's headed up in this direction here, towards Bullock Road, that's when the line opens up. And he ends up being wounded. And that spells the end for General Jackson, leading up to the victory at Chancellorsville and the campaign to Gettysburg. May 1863, something happened here at this property, at the Chandler house site, where the old Fairfield Plantation used to be. Today it's called the Jackson Shrine, and the reason why is because General Stonewall Jackson died here on May 10th of 1863. Now, the Confederate spirits were rising high at that time because they just beat the Union Army over in Chancellorsville. Jackson had come up with a plan that seemed so outlandish, it didn't seem like it was going to work. They were going to split their army. Jackson was going to take a large portion around the side and down some roads and be tucked away to where he couldn't be seen. And that portion of the army was going to attack the right flank of the Union Army and hit it by surprise and knock them off guard and hopefully roll the army up on itself and defeat it. Well, it worked. Jackson got his men out there, surprised them, pushed that army back. But the Union Army was able to figure out a way to rally around itself and slowly attack down. Later on that evening, Jackson decides he's going to do reconnaissance. So he goes out into the woods, he takes his staff with him, and he goes to do reconnaissance. His own men from North Carolina end up firing upon him. They had no idea that it was Jackson and staff. They had no clue who they were shooting at. Jackson had been warned that night too by his own staff, "We should be getting back. It's getting dark. This could be dangerous." And he kept pushing. And eventually they turned around. And that's when he met the bullet. Jackson was shot. And on May 4th, after having his arm amputated and having himself treated on the battlefield, he was brought over here to this small building behind me. And that building would be where he would die, May 10th of 1863. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video today from the Stonewall Jackson Shrine here in Virginia. It's mighty cold out here, but it's been fun. It's been fun taking you out here to this location and visiting it. If you ever get a chance, come on out and take a look at it. The door's not open. You can't get inside the building. You can't really explore what's on the inside, but if you put your face right up to the window, you're kind of able to see what's in there. So come on out, check it out whenever you get a chance, and it's been fun. Another episode of Drive-By History with History with Waffles. Till next time.